human body, we get an opportunity with our developed intelligence, not only with a developed intelligence, but with an intelligence that can be extended to an unlimited extent, so that we can recognize the spiritual identity of ourselves, the spiritual relationship with the Father, and thus go back to our spiritual situation. And that's the purpose of human life. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. I think that point is so beautiful, isn't it? Where Swamiji is explaining, this is, forgive me for misinterpreting him if I do so. Swamiji is explaining that God, who we aspire to perceive, to relate with, resides in all of our hearts. It's within us. And He's close to us. And it reminds me of a saying, that because God is situated next to you in your heart, you as the soul, and God as the super soul, He's already there. And that inner voice that I hear, you hear, and our panelists hear, may be that God in our hearts. Therefore, this one great saint comes to our mind who says, therefore you should try to act in such a way that God will want to see you. And that's really the message that I've received from His Holiness. I want to thank Him for reminding me on that very beautiful point. We are about to start our Q&A, so please be ready with your questions. I want to just give literally 1 to 2 minutes to each of our panelists to ask them a very simple question and a very, very simple answer to summarize your thoughts. Money is the means. What is the goal for a doctor? What is your message to all other doctors watching you throughout the globe and possibly over here? Money is the means. What is the goal in the medical profession?
I think the goal is more than just one facet. It's multifaceted. The goal would be initially considering the fulfillment of desires, the fulfillment of aspirations and dreams. Initially it'll be on a personal level, like me as a person that's practicing medicine, what joy do I benefit from the practice of medicine? Does it fulfill me? Do I get a job satisfaction? It is probably a job satisfaction like no other. So that'll be one of the facets. The other is, how does it influence my relationships with my loved ones, my family, my children, and others? The third would be, is how does it impact on me as a person, my health, my ambitions, what I'm striving for, and, the fulfillment of all those aspects. And then I would also add that how does it influence me as a social being, that a person in the community, and that definition will extend more than just other people, but the environment, the entire environment. How do I harmonize with the environment? And finally, how does the practice of my profession enhance my relationship with God?
Thank you very much. Professor Soni, money is the means and not the goal for students and for teachers. What is the goal?
Firstly, I think it's important for us, and let me go back. I'd like to go back to the 3 issues that Swamiji raised about answering some critical questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? What's my purpose here? If we can answer those questions, then I would say to anybody, don't forget where you came from. Because your purpose in life, and if you want to really reach out to God, I believe that if you do service, where you give off yourself, strange that the system, the economic system that we've adopted in the world, it basically gets us to appropriate, take, and take, rather than say, you also can give. And anyone here who has given of themselves will tell you that it is the greatest joy. It is an eternal joy. And I would like everyone to firstly question the whole idea of wealth. There can be wealth in knowledge. But we have chosen in this material world not to look at those things. There's wealth in integrity. But we've chosen not to look at that. We say, oh, he's such a big man. He's such an important man. Based on what values? It's largely that person is a very rich person. Rather than say, here's a person who has given of himself and has given to society. So that when this person leaves earth for the spiritual world, we can say, here was a man who gave of himself.
Thank you, Professor Sonny. It's an absolutely amazing point to get to. Just very quickly, if there were two books which have given rise to this concept, the concept of self-realization, the oldest books that have influenced so many philosophers across the world, you come to the Gita and the Vedanta. The very first words of the Vedanta is Atato, Brahma Jigyasa. Now that you are a human, ask the question, who am I? Where should I be going? And what can I do for others? And this is how this book begins. And in the Gita, I keep saying, and I'm very proud to say, one of my source texts that I've learned from so many of my seniors, the first word that Krishna says to his disciple Arjuna, Kutastva, how comes you become an Arya? How comes you've fallen underneath this illusion? Question your existence. Question the impermanence of your body and the eternality of the spirit self. Then begin your inquiry for the truth. And therefore hearing this from you is so refreshing, and I really mean to say thank you so much for that, because it really is the beginning of the philosophies that have been the greatest contributions of the greatest thinkers that have ever walked this earth. So I really want to say thanks for sharing it. It means a lot to me to hear that. Mr. Kama, money is the means and not the goal as a banker.
Absolutely.
What is the goal?
All I'm interested in then is the share price. I'll answer that question and give you just two examples, because we can say all these things, right? It's very nice, right? We've got to be able to say that there are people who do these things. For me, one of the people who has been for me one of the greatest examples, right, is a gentleman called Jamshedji Tata. Okay, you've heard of the great Tata Empire. He was the pioneer, right, of that. What did he say at the end? What did he say? What comes from the people must go back to the people. That is the essence, right, of the Tata ethos, even today. Even the great fight which has taken place, which you all have heard about recently, has actually revolved around exactly that. That somebody felt that that ethos was being put at risk for various things which come out of management schools, that you do it this way, you do it that way, right, etc., which may be right as well. But for this group, the ethos is what comes from the people must go back to the people. Right? And it does not necessarily, unfortunately, reflect in share price and things like that. And finally, I'm sorry if Swamiji's heard this too often, right? But I give the personal example, right, of my great-great-grandfather, right, who lived in Gujarat, who became a very big railway contractor and made a lot of money, yes, and he was knighted and everything else, right? But when he was 12 years old, he was asked in school, and he came from a very middle-class family, he was asked in school, where is the river Amazon? And he said, in Africa. And his teacher slapped him. And he left school, he never went back to school, he started earning. From the first day he earned, he gave 1/3 of whatever he earned to charity. He died a very rich man, but to this day his charity still continues, right? So, for me, there is nothing other than, I think somebody said, who said, giving is the greatest pleasure in life. Receiving is an ancillary business, right? And that's what gives me the greatest pleasure in my life. And you know, these are two people who I look at as very personal, you know, examples and are heroes of mine. I must say, since I'm over here, my other hero is Nelson Mandela.
Thank you so much. You might know a famous anecdote, a shubashit, a philosophical anecdote. Dana dharma tatasukam. Sanskrit literature say, from giving, one becomes spiritual. And then one becomes blissful. Dana dharma tatasukam. Swamiji, in close, what is your message to all of us here and for the thousands of people watching online? What would you say? You've repeatedly explained that the goal is to identify ourselves with reality beyond this world so that we can inherently do good to ourselves primarily and to others by developing a vision of the truths that exist within us and outside of us. In closing, what advice would you give for people who have taken this point on board, and what would be their next steps to the science of self-realization?
Knowledge is available, and that knowledge actually leads us to the real purpose of our existence. Or the knowledge of the real purpose of our existence is of absolute necessity. This knowledge is available. The books are there, and appropriate teachers are there. So if you're really sincere about fulfilling your existence, then please find that way. Find the books that has all the information. Just the books are not enough. The books need proper teachers to explain them and enables you to apply them in your life. So they're available. Please find those books, find the teachers, and enrich yourself with this most profound wisdom that the world has. I was searching at one time. I was traveling all over India. I was in Europe before. And at some point I became interested in spiritual life. And I realized to pursue that spiritual life, I have to go back to India. I went back to India, and I was totally disappointed. When I came to India, I thought that as soon as I come back to India, I would find the teacher who would take me by my hand and lead me to the path. And eventually, when I came back to India, and I couldn't find that person whom I could have complete faith and confidence that he is the one who can guide me and to whom I could completely surrender to. And after about 1 year of search, when I became totally disillusioned, I decided that I'm not going to search for him anymore. If I do have a teacher, a spiritual guide, then let him come and pick me up. And very fortunately, that did happen. I came across a book And from the very first page of that book, I realized that this was the path that I was looking for. And then I approached that institution, and at that time I committed myself, and I arrived there in the temple in the evening, and the next morning I shaved up. And my feeling was at that time, I'll give it a try for 2 months. By that time my hair will grow. And if I don't like it, I can go back. And the 2 months will come to an end after 40 years today. Rather, with the passing of time, my conviction is becoming stronger, and other experiences are there that makes me realize that yes, I have found the right path. And so my last message, or my earnest appeal to all of you will be that if you are searching, please let me know. I can take you by your hand and lead you to that path because I found it. Thank you very much.
I think it's amazing how you can actually have an example of a path that we all aspire for, and it means so much, I think, to all of us to know that you're an example of the very question that I asked, and I think it gives us so much hope. Questions and answer time, okay? So we have exactly about 15-20 minutes, if that's okay with the organisers. 15-20 minutes is okay for Q&A? Yep, perfect. So we have a question over here. I will come over to you and you can ask your question. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. I actually believe that the education system throughout the world, together with the code of society under which people operate, has changed, and as a result, we have moved towards materialism, and all we focus is on money and money and money, and we forget about human values. Now, human values is all about spiritualism, distinguishing between what is right and wrong. And we just grow up in that society. I mean, I take, for instance, when you go to a shopping mall, you'll see a little child who's 5 years old, and the parents are busy taking him around, showing him different types of shoes, and the next thing is, they're telling the child, you see this shoe with the tick, that's a Nike shoe. It may cost 500 rand or 1,000 rand, but you must buy that shoe. So, from a very young age, you can see the child is becoming more conscious about these things, about signs and marks, and the next thing when he goes to school, he finds that in his school, the parents already asking, oh, who drives this car, and who drives a Lamborghini and a Porsche and all of that. So it's all about, and then it's the education system. And the way the education system runs, it's all about money, money, and money. So I'm saying that you need to create the whole man or woman. Part of it is materialism. Yes, you do have to make a profit, you do have to make money, but you have to be fair, and hence the other aspect of human values that comes into play, which says that you must look at what is right and what is wrong. You must look at the whole thing about compassion and the moral issues that go along with it. And if one has that kind of balance, then we'll have a much better society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Zed, I have to ask you to comment on that because you're very much aware about the commercialization of wealth and people who follow such marketing campaigns. What is your view on this?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. But all I can say is that I don't think, in a very practical sense, you're going to be able to ensure that your children, right, are going to be immune to all the influences outside. The only way you can shape that is through the life which you lead and the example which you give them. And I don't necessarily believe that if you've given your child a pair of shoes that cost 30 and somebody's given a child that only costs 5, that is better or worse. That is a value judgment at the end of the day. What is important is what are the values which you are imbuing in your children? What are the thought processes which they see right, coming out of yourself and your actions. Because at the end of the day, remember, you are totally responsible for everything that takes place within yourself. You can't keep blaming third parties about all these things, because as human beings, the thing which distinguishes us is that we each have choice. We must make those choices. And if we make those choices, our children in turn, right, okay, through our example are going to learn. But you're not going to be able to banish material societies. It is how do you operate in those societies as a person and as an individual, and what is the influence which you have on other people. And that's what great people have done. They've lived in very difficult societies, but they have been different in what they personally do and what are the values which people take from those people. And that is our duty in life. And I come back to, I was told very simply by my parents just one thing, right? Don't forget the poor. I come from India. Okay, I'm Indian. Great country, etc. But there are an enormous amount of poor people there. And we've got to think about that every day. If you try to keep that in your mind and do things, not just think about it, you've actually got to do things, even small things. Those are the things that make differences.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful comment. Any other questions that we have in the crowd? Please raise your hands. If not, I'll have to do the big boss style. यदि आपके पास कोई प्रश्न है, तो कृपया बोलिए. Anybody would like to make a comment or a question? Okay, well, I have to walk over all the way to my wife because I have asked her to make a comment on your view to Dr. Nardev. Please.
Maybe I was wondering that if a family is successful, what would be the best way to influence your children to not maybe become spoiled with that wealth? How could you teach your children the values that they can enjoy this wealth that the parents have created, but also to have the ambition to create it for themselves?
Told you it would be a fantastic question. Please, Dr. Nardev. She asks me this every day.
My first thought is that you be the example to your children. What you do will determine more than what you say. So that will be the first thing. So if you want them to cultivate the values that you want, then let them see it in you. My other thoughts would be that having money is not evil. Because sometimes it is portrayed that those who are wealthy are necessarily engaged in activities and that the wealth is ill-gotten, especially that come from the perspective of those who don't have it. So, if you already are wealthy and your children are growing up in that environment, is to teach them that wealth in itself doesn't determine whether you're good or bad. Because wealth takes on the persona of the person who possesses it. So good people do good things with the wealth, and bad people do bad things with the wealth.
Thanks, Dr. Nardev. Any other questions? If you'd like to even a comment? I can walk all the way down to the end, and I'm going to ask you to meet me halfway. Just meet me halfway if you can. Thank you. The question right over here. Thank you.
Well, it's not so much a question, a comment. Yeah. From my experience, I'm a doctor by trade, and I recall that when I first started practice, coming from a humble background, the temptation at the time of the starting of your profession is there to cheat and not to make your money, to get ahead. But I think the overriding factor at that point is for you to have a reality check at that point and put everything in your life into perspective, that I will not cheat and I will provide a service. And from my experiences, this is what I've done. And this leads you to a better, evolving a better quality of life and the way you evaluate your surroundings. And strangely enough, I think it is one of the factors that provided me a very happy environment, happy family, happy spiritual master. And I think all of these things come as a result of a reward from a higher power. And therefore, my comment is that if I can give advice to the younger generation, is not to fall prey to commercialism and the conditioning to make money. Because that is, once you fall prey to that, it's a slippery slope downwards. And I'm talking from experience.
Thank you very much, Dr. G. Yes, please. Yes, of course. Very convenient.
What I'd like to say is that after listening to all the speakers, what I'm going to take away today is something, is it Zed? Yeah. What Zed said initially when you asked him about leadership. And he said, a leader, a good leader, something to that effect, will have to have values, but the most important thing is he has to epitomize those values. And everything else that Swamiji said reinforced what Zed said. So that's what I'm going to take away from tonight. About values and ethics being embedded in a curriculum, like Professor Soni said, I just think that if the teacher, the lecturer, does not really understand that in a spiritual way, as Swamiji has been relating to us, you will not be able to convey that to the students. And that is why we're still living in a competitive world. And you know, money is everything. That brings me to what Professor Garaj said. He says, you know, this is what parents do, and they take children to a store, and you know, and they're shown all the things with brand names and whatever. I was at a conference not long ago, and I asked somebody a very similar question. You know, we are trying to do so much in the cultural field to keep, you know, our culture going and to keep ourselves engaged. How do we keep our children engaged? And he very straightforward told me, you don't need to keep the children engaged. You keep yourself engaged and they'll follow.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment. Professor Soni, would like to say something with regards to that? Can I?
No, I fully agree.
Thank you. Anybody else like to make a comment or a question? Don't be shy, we've only got a few minutes left. Anybody else? Please, would you just please stand? Thank you. Thank you.
My comment, if money is the means, what is the goal? I don't think those two should be linked, because money gives you access to whatever you want in life, maybe the better things or certain things. So why should money be linked to a goal? I think the goal is your value systems, your ethos. And to be rich, I don't think it's about money, but to be rich is about maybe having a positive mental attitude, having sound physical health, creating harmony in human relations. Those are the things that make you rich. Money is a byproduct. If you do all the right things, maybe that's your goal, to get some money. But I don't think they should be linked. That's my comment.
Thank you. Anybody from the panel would like to comment on that? Okay, so I will turn our attention to Bangladesh. We always have questions from around the world. We'll do one question. Obviously, Bangladesh is very close to many of our hearts. The question is from Malloy. What is the role of controlling our mind, mental and emotional, in sticking to the real goal? And he explains, what normally happens is the person is blown away by the temptations or glitters of this world. So the question is, what is the role of controlling our mind in sticking to the real goal?
Sorry. Swamiji, that looks like your kind of question.
Well, I'll go back to Bhagavad Gita. One verse saying, Dhayate Vishayan Pungsha Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Lo Krodho Vijayate Krodhat Bhavati Sanmoha Sanmohat Smriti Vibhrama Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinasho Buddhinashat Pranashyati. That is, the consciousness through the senses. Okay, here, what is mind actually? Mind is the internal sense. Mind is the receiver of all 5 sense perceptions. We have 5 external senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch. And mind is the internal sense which actually receives all these perceptions. And mind is the medium through which the consciousness is flowing. The consciousness is coming from the soul. And through the mind, the consciousness is flowing externally, through the senses to the objects of the senses. And as a result of that, lust develops, the desire to enjoy. And when this desire for enjoyment is frustrated, anger develops. Kamat krodho vijayate. Krodhat bhavati sanmoha. Due to anger, one becomes bewildered. And as a result of that, he loses his intelligence. Buddhinashat pranashyati. And when one loses his intelligence, he is doomed. So when we allow the mind to flow, take the consciousness externally, then ultimately it causes us to become doomed or lose our identity completely. Now the other way the mind can go, that Krishna is saying, man mana bhavo. That is, project your mind towards me, because he is the source of all consciousness. We are individual consciousness, tiny little living entities, but we are conscious. But originally that consciousness is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all of us. Now when we project our consciousness towards Him, that also can be done through mind. And when we do that, then we automatically surrender ourselves unto Him, recognizing how great He is and how dependent we are upon Him. And when we surrender ourselves unto Him, then He picks us up in His loving embrace, and the loving relationship develops between us and Him. That love actually leads to the ultimate joy that we all are hankering for. So this way, it is up to us to which direction we are going to project our consciousness. Through the mind, towards the material nature. If we do that, then our mind will function as our enemy. But if we utilize the mind in order to project our consciousness towards the Lord, then He will become our greatest friend and lead us to the ultimate kingdom of eternity, knowledge, and bliss.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. On that note, it's been exactly an hour and a half that we've been inquiring submissively. We've been hearing these beautiful treasures of wisdom and, may I also say, life experiences. We've had a person who is responsible for the health of many people. We have a person responsible for disseminating knowledge. We have a person responsible for the wealth and the acquisition and the maintenance of finance globally. And we also have representation of the spiritual reality. It has been such an honor and a pleasure for me, on your behalf, to pose and inquire for our 4 panelists. I'm overwhelmed, and therefore I would like you to kindly please join me in very deeply thanking Dr. Nardev, Professor Soni, to stay amongst us, if I can say, Mr. Zed Kama, and of course, His Holiness Bhakti Chadal Swami. And to close, I would like to now request Dr. Shunil Ramjatan to please come on and say a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been tasked to do the vote of thanks, and it is a great pleasure to thank you all for attending this very unique forum. Much of what has been discussed, of course, will leave us with a lot of thoughts to ponder and give us ammunition to improve our lives going forward. So, on behalf of the founder Acharya of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, we would like to express our gratitude to our distinguished guests for attending, taking time off your busy weekday schedules to attend this forum. So firstly, to the deep sense of appreciation, that I'd like to thank His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami for giving birth to this type of discussion, which is very unique to our environment, and to awake our understanding of for the purpose and duties of the human being in this era, and to realize the necessity to live our lives appropriately. So thank you very much. This whole concept that you witnessed this evening was the birth child of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami, and has been wonderfully accepted throughout the world. And we've had great success. And I'm sure Radha Rahman here will testify to that. Also, I'd like to extend a special thank you to the Honorable Head of Department of Parks, Recreation and Culture, Mr. Temko Singh Nkobo, with whom we hope to foster a long association going forward with many of our cultural events. And to all our special guests, we hold you in the greatest esteem. I would like to acknowledge the time and effort that was put in by our panelists, the moderator, with whom this would not have been a success. So Mr. Zed Kama and Surinder Shandeya, I know him as Radha Rahman Prabhu. We have come from far and wide. Earlier when I was speaking to Radha Rahman, he said that people had warned him not to come to Africa, South Africa in particular. But I think he's changed his mind now. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you for taking this risk. Professor Niru Soni, we really appreciate your input today, and apologize for giving you such short notice, but you've done extremely well. Dr. Nardev Jagmohan, who's been a very close friend of mine for many years, and thank you for accepting this invitation to participate. Really appreciate it. And so, to the service providers, a sincere thank you to Corey and the team from Coastlands for accommodating us so well and helping to make this a success. The sound and recording was expertly handled by Wesley and the Gearhouse team. Thank you very much. And I'd like to extend my gratitude to Prem Vikash for so meticulously arranging this event to be live streamed throughout the world. The advertising, printing and design for all the marketing material was choreographed by Randir from Pandey Print. Thank you, Randir. We can always rely on you. Thank you. And thank you to all the service providers for the enormous cooperation in organizing this event. Without your assistance, we couldn't make this possible. To all my friends, thank you very much for helping put this together, and especially to Himanga, sitting there quietly in the corner. Thank you for all the logistic arrangements. He's been our strength for this meeting. Thank you, Himanga. And I'd like to place on record my hearty thanks to all persons that I may have inadvertently not thanked and mentioned here. And I cannot thank you all enough for attending and being part of this interactive forum. And it's been a pleasure to host you. So we've come to the end. If you would wish to ask in an informal fashion questions to the members of the panel, you're welcome to. And thank you very much, and a safe trip home.